My name's Zoe Taylor, and with MedEntry's help, I was able to gain access into my number one university preference, medicine at the University of Adelaide. Today I'll be talking about medical entry and the services that MedEntry offers. Firstly, I'll run through the pathways into medicine and then the structure of the UCAT. I'll also go through some UCAT example questions, briefly touch on university interviews, as well as Commonwealth supported versus bonded medical places. Finally, I'll discuss what services MedEntry provides to students. There are numerous pathways into medicine. The first of these is a school leaver entrance pathway, which involves students undertaking the UCAT. Following their UCAT result, they'll be offered interviews, and then following their interview and UCAT, their ATAR will also be taken into account in offering places. This pathway takes around 5 to 6 years, depending on the university. The second pathway is graduate entry, where students undertake a different degree first and then postgraduate medicine. Following their first degree, the GAMSAT is required, and then places are offered based on their GAMSAT, grade point average at university, and interviews. This is a longer pathway and takes around 7 to 10 years. The third pathway is non-standard entry, where students can start another degree at university and then decide to transfer into medicine. This requires the UCAT and an interview again, and will take slightly longer as time is spent in a different degree prior. The final pathway is guaranteed entry from school into a postgraduate degree. This still takes 7 to 10 years, however eliminates having to sit the GAMSAT and an interview after the first degree. This is a list of the universities in Australia which accept Year 12 students directly into medicine. Those with an asterisk next to them offer the guaranteed entry program into a postgraduate course, which I briefly discussed before. This is also a list of universities in Australia. These ones are those that offer dentistry. Ones with asterisks next to them are slightly newer and hence a little easier to get into. As medicine and dentistry are very competitive, most students will apply all across Australia. As each state has its own individual application process, there are different websites required to lodge these applications. There are 3 different types of medical school places in Australia: Commonwealth supported, bonded, and private. Commonwealth supported places require no fees up front, and fees are put onto a HECS debt so that students can pay these off after they graduate. The fees are the same for bonded medical places, however students have to agree before they begin the degree to work rurally for a certain period of time once they graduate. This is due to a deficit of rural doctors and is in place to encourage young doctors to work in these areas. These places are generally offered to lower candidates. Private universities such as Bond require expensive fees up front and therefore are slightly easier to get into. So there are a few questions for Year 11 and 12 students to think about in regard to medical applications. Firstly, whether they'll accept a bonded medical school place or not, whether they'll apply interstate and whether they meet the criteria for interstate universities, whether they'll consider private universities, their order of preferences, and what their plan B is if they aren't successful in getting into undergraduate medicine. So there's 3 parts to the process from school. As I've said before, there's your Year 12 results, your UCAT score, and interviews. This can be likened to a triathlon where there's swim, run, cycle, so 3 elements, and you have to master all 3 to be successful. So there are a few things to think about before starting your UCAT preparation. You need to plan out your time and choose the right preparation. You can't leave your preparation for the last minute, as it's highly advised that you don't cram for this test. You shouldn't rely on UCAT official materials alone. Although these are really useful and excellent to use, they're usually not enough for most students. Old materials also shouldn't be relied on, especially in 2019 when the UCAT is replacing the UMAT. And students need to remember throughout their preparation that they should be focusing on their ATAR because this is also really important. But in order to get into medicine or dentistry, UCAT results are also really important and the 2 need to be balanced. From my experience, practice was key to doing well in the UCAT, and the MedEntry LMS for me was the centre of the UCAT universe. The LMS offers exams, drills, guides, solutions, and much more to students. And it's also the only place where you can compare your scores with the rest of the Australian and New Zealand UCAT cohort, who are the people that you will be competing against. I've mentioned that I used MedEntry services when I was preparing for what was then the UMAT. Specifically, I started my preparation by attending a MedEntry workshop, and then following this workshop, used the online learning management system on my own to do practice drills and tests. I also met students at this workshop who I then worked in a study group with. Once I'd received my UMAT result, I then attended a MedEntry interview training session in November. So what actually is the UCAT? The UCAT's a test to help select students for entry into medicine and dentistry. It's a multiple choice exam which tests a range of personal skills and aptitudes that doctors should possess. It's not knowledge based and rather tests your ability to think and not recall facts. The UCAT is quite different to school or university tests or exams that students have sat in the past. So where school or university tests generally assess your knowledge and occasionally your skills, the UCAT tests your ability to reason in different ways. In school tests, you're usually given enough time to finish every question, whereas the UCAT is designed so most people will not finish every question, and time management is crucial to doing well. Throughout school and university tests and exams, sometimes students are also able to bring their own personal views to answer some questions, whereas in the UCAT, personal views must not be brought to question answers. The UCAT's 2 hours long, which is slightly longer than school or university tests, but possibly shorter than exams. It's a computer-based test, whereas school and university tests are usually pen and paper-based. And as I've mentioned previously, it's difficult to cram for, and it's definitely not recommended that students do this, whereas they may have gotten away with cramming for tests in the past. So there are 5 different sections of the UCAT. There's verbal reasoning, decision making, quantitative reasoning, abstract reasoning, and situational judgment. Each section has a different number of questions in it, and a different amount of time is allocated for that section. So in total, there's 233 questions that need to be performed in 115 minutes. This is an example of a verbal reasoning question. If you would like to try this question, please pause the video and remember that you'll have on average 29 seconds per question in this section. So the answer is C, administer oxygen. One of the key ideas of this passage is that attacks are provoked by a shortage of oxygen in the blood. So the answer is C. It should not be necessary to refer back to the passage to get this answer. This example question is from the decision-making section, and if you'd like to try this question, again, please pause the video. Remember that you'll have on average 64 seconds per question in this section. So the first answer is no. Anaesthetists who were male but had subspecialised in other areas may have been present at this conference. The second answer is yes. No attendee who'd subspecialised in chronic pain management was a man at the conference. The third answer is no, as this assumes that there were people who attended the conference who had subspecialised in chronic pain management. Potentially no one who had subspecialised in chronic pain management attended. The fourth answer is also no. This statement is only reflecting on the number of males when it comes to the subspecialty of chronic pain management, not the total number of male attendees. And the final answer is yes, as this is an accurate reflection of the statement. This example question is from the quantitative reasoning section. And if you'd like to try it, please pause the video, remembering that you'll have on average 40 seconds per question in this section. When answering this question, it's important to watch out for HGVs, as there are only silver and white HGVs, so you shouldn't mistake the 38 silver for red ones. Adding up the total red vehicles, there are 30 cars, 1 van or minibus, 3 motorcycles, and 2 buses or coaches. This adds up to 36 total vehicles that are red. Looking at the white vehicles, there are 10 cars, 29 vans or minibuses, 2 motorcycles, 12 HGVs, and 18 buses or coaches, which totals 71 white vehicles. Therefore, the ratio of red to white vehicles is 36 to 71, which is approximately 1 to 2. This is an example question from the abstract reasoning section. So again, if you'd like to attempt it, please pause the video and remember that on average you'll have 14 seconds per question in this section. Looking at the individual boxes in set A, when there's a white cross present, there's also always a black circle. And when there's a black cross present, there's also always a white circle. The X's don't have any effect on adding or taking circles from the boxes. Looking at set B, when there's a white cross present, there's also a white circle. And when there's a black cross present, also a black circle. Again, the X's have no effect on adding or taking circles from the boxes. Therefore, the answer is set A. As you can see, there are 3 white crosses and therefore 3 black circles, and there's 1 black cross and therefore 1 white circle. This is an example of a situational judgment question, and again, as previously, if you'd like to attempt it, please pause the video. On average, you'll have approximately 23 seconds per question in this section. The correct answer here is D, as this is an inappropriate course of action. While it's important to maintain good working relationships with colleagues, in this case, the welfare of patients needs to take priority. In this case, there's a potential for patient care to be compromised, as Michael's alcohol dependence may result in him being unfit to safely fulfil his roles. Therefore, Sarah has an obligation to inform others of Michael's comments. She should therefore not promise that his comments will be kept confidential, and doing so damages the trust Michael has placed in her. Interviews are also crucial in gaining a spot in medical school places, and preparation for these interviews can greatly improve performance. Why choose MedEntry for UCAT preparation? MedEntry is extremely trusted and guarantees quality. It has a 4.8 star rating on both Google and Facebook. MedEntry is currently the only registered training organisation in Australia. It's run by doctors, academics and psychometricians, and it's recommended by med students, teachers and doctors. It's the only organisation thus far to be featured in medical journals such as the Australian Doctor and Medical Independent. MedEntry is also extremely experienced, specialising only in the UCAT. MedEntry has prepared students for medical entry for over 20 years with a great track record of success. MedEntry provides extensive resources to students, with the LMS comprised of 10 practice tests, guides and drills, as well as video guides, video solutions, and a Eureka question bank. There's an iPhone or Android app available to students, as well as email and phone support. The simulated UCAT platform exactly simulates the real UCAT. This image is captured from the simulated platform, showing a decision-making question within a drill. And MedEntry provides the latest personalised technology with detailed personalised feedback. This slide shows the retry feature that's available to students to reattempt questions that they get incorrect. So on this student's first attempt, they got 190 correct answers out of 233, leaving 43 questions to reattempt. On their second attempt, they answered 30 more correctly, and this left 13 incorrect answers. This slide shows personalised feedback on how many drills have been completed by the student in each section, and their averages for these sections. And this slide shows exam results with expected percentiles and results compared to the other students also completing MedEntry practice tests. MedEntry provides UCAT training in Australia, New Zealand and Ireland, online and through workshops, as well as through one-on-one tutoring and webinar services. MedEntry also provides interview training for medical and dental entry, as well as for registrar specialist programs. MedEntry can also provide application reviews for universities that require these, and email and phone support. MedEntry has a Facebook page that can be accessed to both students and teachers, and also a website. So if you have any questions, please jump onto www.medentry.edu.au. Thank you very much for your time.